We're going to begin this afternoon with our second keynote speaker, and we're very fortunate to have with us this afternoon Donna Flavell. Kia ora, Donna. It's lovely to have you here with us. Donna is the recently appointed Chief Executive of Waikato-Tainui. And to introduce Donna, would you please welcome Rongo Kirkwood, the Chair of Philanthropy New Zealand's Maori Advisory Committee.
Kia ora tātou. I'd like to share with you a whakatauki from one of our whaia tupuna from Waikato. Her name is Te Puia Herangi. Mehe mea ka moimoia ahau ko ahau anake. Mehe mea ka moimoia tātou ka taia tātou. If I am to dream, I dream alone. If we all dream together, then we shall achieve. Donna Flavell was recently appointed as the Chief Executive of Te Whakakitenga o Waikato, the iwi organisation for Waikato-Tainui. Donna has iwi affiliations to Waikato, Ngāpuhi and Ruapani. Donna has worked for Waikato-Tainui since 1996, when she was selected for a tribal graduate program following the completion of a law degree at Waikato University. She immediately demonstrated the potential for development and was earmarked then for future leadership roles. Donna's most recent roles include Principal Advisor for Waikato-Tainui, General Manager of the Waikato Raupatu River Trust, and General Manager of Strategy and Influence for Ngaitahu. As Chief Executive of Te Whakakitenga o Waikato, Donna will share with us her iwi journey and aspirations. Nau mai piki mai e te rangatira, Donna Flavell.
Kia ora koutou katoa, kia ora koe e te tuahine. Ko te kupu tuatahi e wehi ana ki te atua, e whakahōnore ana i tō tātou kingi tūheitia me tana hoa wahine a te atawhai me tārawa whānau mokupuna, pai mārire ki a rātou, e te hau kāinga, e noho nei, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou, e ngā iwi o te motu, kia koutou katoa hoki, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Ko Waiahau, ko Taupuri te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko Waikato te iwi, ko Ngāti te ata te hapu, ko Donna Flavell tōku ingoa. Kia ora everyone. I'm very privileged and humbled to be now in the capacity of the Chief Executive. As you would have heard, I've been around for a long time, but not the whole full time. During those 20 odd years, I've popped in and out every now and then, and so I guess for me today it's just I would really like to thank Philanthropy New Zealand for the opportunity to come here and share some of our journeys. I've been asked specifically to speak about the Waikato-Tainui journey from pre and post-settlement and the types of initiatives or projects that are having a great impact on our future. I would say at the outset, if our iwi are to be successful, then our communities are successful, our regions are successful, and indeed, I believe it's the only way forward, and if New Zealand is to succeed globally, then we can all be successful as a result of working together. It would be remiss of me, here you have a picture about the navigating our future, but it would be remiss of me if I don't start the presentation off by providing a bit of context of why we are, as an organisation, Waikato-Tainui, and how we got to where we are today. As some of you will know, the Waikato region is quite a thriving area, and so today with a highly productive dairy industry, the Waikato River itself provides a source of food and resources. It generates 1/3 of the country's electricity. It's a main highway. And I guess in the early times when the settlers arrived in our country, Waikato region was prime real estate. So our land were being lost really, I guess, to accommodate for some of that settler, and that wasn't a bad thing for us. It was actually working hand in hand in our communities. But I guess at the time, as a result of the land being lost, we brought together, the iwi brought together what we call, to unite the tribes, what we call the Kingitanga movement. And that was back in 1858. So we'll be celebrating a big milestone next year. So effectively the Kingitanga was to unite iwi and to stop some of the land sales. They held a hui in Pukawa, in Lake Taupo, and Potato Te Whetowhetho, who was one of our tupuna, was crowned the first Māori king. As a result of that Kingitanga movement, I guess the colonial government at the time saw that as a direct undermining of that colonial government. And so the Crown's response was basically the confiscation of 1.2 million acres of our tribal lands. So there in the picture you'll see the red area. That's basically what we call the raupatu. That is our confiscated area. And effectively, at that point where the colonial troops came into our territory, into Paumangatawhiri, our king at that time, Tawhiol, had declared that area to be our aukati, and it was at that point in time, if the colonial troops crossed that line, then we were to go to war. And we went to war in 1863 as a result, and that was to protect our lands. Unfortunately, we weren't successful with the muskets at that time, and so we actually went to exile, and that's why we have the king, what we call the king country, because our king went to retreat in the Te Kuiti area. And so Maniapoto looked after us during that time of that real turbulent period. They looked after us, and for 20 years we went into exile. So straight away though, that didn't stop us. And that's one thing that I can say. So the issue of the land confiscations and the raupatu, that dominated pretty much our engagement with the Crown and the Kingitanga since then. And so it was in 1865, pretty much straight away we searched for redress. So this is a long time coming, and I'm lucky enough to be now the chief executive of what our organisation has manifested itself to be, but it's been a long period of our history, of many of our tupuna, to actually get us to where we are today. So in 1884, we had Tawhiol. He went to England. And it's not one of those things where you jump in a plane. It was like a long boat trip. And so, pretty much going there to petition the monarch at that time, which I think was Queen Victoria, and he wanted a Māori Parliament and an independent commission into the raupatu. And effectively, he was referred back to New Zealand to be dealt with at the time, and we were dismissed at that point in time. So when his son, Mahuta, he tried another way in terms of searching for redress, and that was to go into Parliament. And again, there was frustrations, weren't as successful, but we did have a Sims Commission of Inquiry into the land confiscations. And it was there that there was a report that was produced in relation to the wrongdoings at that time. And it wasn't, and then Tarata, he tried another trip back to England to again try and right the wrongs of the confiscations. That was unsuccessful. And I guess it wasn't till Te Puia Herangi and Dr. Pei Te Hurinui Jones who actually achieved a partial settlement with the New Zealand government at that time, and we created the Tainui Māori Trust Board. That partial settlement was only £5,000. And that £5,000, as dire as we were, was spent on education. So ever since that point in time, education has been critical to the types of projects and initiatives of what we're doing today, to how we invest in terms of some of our education initiatives for our people. So the Tainui Māori Trust Board was established, and I also put up there a mention around Dame Te Atai Rangikahu and Sir Robert Mahuta, because Dame Te Atai was our 6th monarch. She was the first Māori monarch, and she was the longest reigning of them all. 40 years in terms of her reign, and during that time, she took us through probably one of the most transformational changes for our iwi in particular. And that was settling our 1995 settlement. So in terms of a treaty settlement process, in 1987 we had our claim filed, but it wasn't probably until 1989 when the Coal Corp, when the Crown was selling the minerals and the lands, and of course we still had a claim over our lands, including the minerals, and so we filed an injunction over the sale of the SOEs over Coal Corp. And that was pretty much, during that time, there was no real treaty settlement process. And so the court pretty much directed the tribe and the Crown to sit down and work out how we're going to resolve these grievances. And effectively, through that decision from the court, Sir Robert Mahuta led the negotiations on behalf of Waikato-Tainui and Ngā Marae Tōpū, which is our cluster of our marae, and worked out with the government how we're going to resolve all of these issues in relation to Waikato-Tainui. As a gesture of good faith, in 1992, some of our lands were returned, and the irony of it, so in 1992 and 1994 we got back both Hopopu and Te Rapa, and those were targeted lands from our people, because those were military bases for the government. So you had Hopopu, which was an army base, based out of Ngāroa Wahia, and then you've got Te Rapa, which was the Air Force base. And just because of the times of the raupatu, of when we went to war in terms of the colonial troops, the military camps were sought after in terms of redress and the types of properties. So Hopopu is now our administration arm for our tribe. Te Rapa is probably one of the biggest retail shopping centres in this country, called Te Awa, and I hope you've all been there to visit. So in 1995, in terms of the raupatu, our land settlement, probably the biggest redress out of the settlement was the apology by the Crown, because we were no longer labelled as rebels, rebellious against the Crown. Our peoples, the loss of lives were acknowledged from the muskets and the gun and the wars, and also the loss of our lands, probably more specifically, because that was our asset base, that was our place. And so that apology was really probably more significant than the actual cash and land settlement that we got back in the end of $170 million. At the time too, I think, because there was no other settlements in this country, Waikato-Tainui were the first. It took a lot of courage and leadership to be able to actually sign on that dotted line, because it was an unknown territory. And of course, when you think about the government's envelope at that time, there was a fiscal cap of all treaty settlements in this country to be capped off at $1 billion in total. And of course we got 17% of that with $170 million. That wasn't near enough in terms of the value loss, but it was a starting point. And I guess for our iwi, we had to put a stake in the ground about determining our own future, and that was a start. And I guess if there was one big clever thing that our leadership done too, was our relativity clause. And Sir Robert Mahuta, in his genius, because it is genius, he future-proofed. Because we were the first, the relativity clause was actually the insurance clause for our people. So should the Crown then breach its $1 billion cap that they placed on all of the iwi in relation to our settlements, then we get another 17 cents in every dollar over and above that cap. So in December 2012, it was breached, and so we got a further payment of $68 million for our people. And it keeps going up every 5 years. We get another top up every 5 years until 2044. So that's the relativity clause. Massive, massive future forward thinking, very innovative at that time, very smart. And I thought he was just, the bee's knees. So Robert, bee's knees. He was amazing. And in relation to the river settlement, so we had a number of outstanding claims as well. So for Waikato-Tainui, because we were the first, it wasn't full and final. It was only our Raupatu settlement that was actually really dealt with. So we had a number of outstanding claims that were still to be resolved. The Waikato River was one. I was lucky enough to be on this team that supported Tuku Roirangi Morgan and Lady Raiha Mahuta through the negotiations. And it was a real privilege to be part and parcel of that. I started on the river settlement with Sir Robert. I was actually the grad in 1996. He used to give us a whole heap of jobs. So this was his leadership. We had a whole heap of graduates coming through. I came out of law school. My first job was the river settlement. There were a few others that got other jobs. One was Nathan York, and he built the base. He was the commercial guy. Had another lady, Dr. Sarah Jane Tiakiwai. She did education. She built the college. She ran the college, so endowed college. So, all of the graduates, I was very lucky to be able to continue to work on that because I started that mahi to be part of the team that was able to finish that mahi. So there are two real big principles in relation to the river settlement. First one was around Manawa Te Awa. So if you think about the river and the types of pressures that our river system is facing, and like I said earlier, it generates 1/3 of the country's electricity. It has about 33 point source discharges. We've got a whole heap of towns and communities relying on it. We've got some of the biggest industry. It's got some of the worst, so we've got 8 power companies that reside along its banks of the river. You've got a whole heap of iwi. So it's one of the most utilised rivers and economic resources in this country, the Waikato-Awa. And so it was very complex in terms of how do you find a way, because Waikato-Tainui is at the end of all of that pollution and all of the impacts on our people. We could no longer go to the awa, we could no longer play in our awa, we could no longer gather kai from our awa. So how were we able to fix that so we can enjoy our relationship back with our awa? And we had to think of a way to bring all of those relationships together. So Te Manawa Te Awa is really about the river itself, first and foremost. That's the priority around the health and well-being of our awa. And so we developed a holistic approach around that, bringing together all of those communities, taking responsibility and ownership around what goes in it and what goes out. And then we created the Waikato River Authority, which is also a clean-up trust. They have a clean-up trust hat, and they pretty much distribute, they've got $210 million as a result of our settlement to be able to distribute to clean up projects. So I guess for me, in terms of the river settlement, this was not about our people, this was about our awa. And the sacrifice, again, I think, in terms of the tribe saying, if we are going to make a difference to the cleanup of our river, then we need to create an independent body that allows everyone to be part of that. So that $210 million that was negotiated through our river settlement was actually given to the River Authority, and Waikato-Tainui has to apply for funding like everybody else to be able to participate in those cleanup projects. So again, that was the commitment I think that our kaumātua had in terms of the seriousness of actually wanting to make sure that our awa was going to be clean and there was a body that was actually going to be the advocate for that cleanup. In terms of the mana whakahaere, that was really about our people. So again, it was about restoring our relationship so that we could go back and go fishing, so that we could gather our kai and do what we want to do in terms of exercising, our relationship with our river. So there were some mechanisms within that settlement to enable us to do that. We have initiatives like Te Rohoi, where we take our tribal members right from the source of our awa, which is in Ngāti Rangi, so at Nukuhau, they call it Nukuhau, but we call it Waikato-Iti, and right through travelling taupo, right up to Port Waikato, working with other iwi through those relationships. So our initiative that we're doing at the moment is to be able to restore some of those relationships back. Also, our dream is that our people are the ones who are on the river, who are there making the decisions and who are there exercising their mana whakahaere in terms of, you know, our kaitiakitanga, I guess if you call it. We call it mana whakahaere. So that's a little bit about our historical overview in terms of some of the initiatives, and I guess it takes us, that brings us to today in terms of our vision for our people. And our vision is reflecting back on our king, Kingi Tāwhiao at that time. So when King Tāwhiao fled to the King Country after the Land Wars in 1864, he said, we will be back, and we will be back, and we will build our own whare. And so I guess this was a challenge, and King Tāwhiao was quite well known to have all of these whakatauki for our people, and so we're using them a lot in terms of our current context today. And in terms of our mission, reflecting on Princess Te Puia, or Te Puia Herangi, you know, and it's about growing, it's about kia tupu, kia hua, kia puawai, to grow, to prosper, to sustain and flourish. And I think for us it's about determining what that looks like in our own way. So this is our purpose, and again I'm just kind of giving you a snapshot around some of that whakatauki around. We want to be able to grow a prosperous, healthy, vibrant, innovative and culturally strong iwi. And I guess our dream for each of our tribal members to be able to get up and say, I'm committed to the kingitanga, I'm fluent in te reo Māori, I'm strong in my tikanga, I'm healthy, I'm well educated, financially secure, environmentally conscious and socially sound. That is a big list. And that was one big dream. So we're like, how are we going to do this? So yeah, it's a massive undertaking, but I think it's achievable. I like to be optimistic, you know, and it's our aspiration that each and every one of our tribal members is able to get up and be proud about who they are and what they do. So we've got 68,000 tribal members, although, actually I corrected because we just had morning tea the other day where we had a birthday cake because we had 70,000 tribal members who are now on our tribal register. So it's a lot of people, it's a lot of whānau. And then also in relation to that, we've actually got 33 hapu and 68 marae. So our whakatapuranga is effectively, Whakatapuranga 2050 is our blueprint for cultural, social and economic advancement for our people. So it's pretty much our strategic plan, it's our strategic vision, it's a long-term one, and every 3 years we think about the types of projects that we've got to do now to help us work towards that big vision that we have in front of us. And so fundamental to that is our approach. It was one that we're focusing on our people now. So we've set up our asset base, we now have a good position in terms of our asset growth, and now we've got to find ways of actually enabling our people to be able to do it for themselves. And so this is really for me what Whakatapuranga is about. It's about changing the dial for our whānau. Because the raupatu, while there was that physical aspect, it's that social aspect that people don't see in terms of the impacts of what had happened to our people and the loss and connection back to our lands. So that's what we're aiming to do in the next wee while in terms of some of the key projects, in terms of some of the key milestones, is really around focusing on our people, about ourselves being proud about who we are, our identity, our diligence to succeed in everything that we do. But education's always been one of our big focuses for our tribe. We've just distributed out $1 million this year for our tribal members in terms of tertiary education alone. And we've had a focus really around engineering, the science, all the STEM, you know, the big buzzwords in terms of the STEM projects. But also one of the biggest ones that we still want to work on is really our reo initiatives. So, you know, there's a lot of funding that's been taken into to ensure that we are going to be successful in terms of whatever we do. And in terms of the self-determination, again, around the economic independence, what are the types of initiatives that we need to do to ensure that each and every one of our tribal members are financially independent. So just to give you an overview of our tribal structure, we're quite big, and as I mentioned, we're 70,000 tribal members. I've got to get that change in my head. 68 marae. We have a tribal parliament called Te Whakakitenga. And so we have 2 members from each of those 68 marae come together every quarter to meet around our tribal business. So we report back to our tribal parliament, we call it. From there, we elect our Te Ara-Taura, which is our executive board. So we have an 11-member executive board, 10 of them are elected by our tribal parliament, one's appointed by the king, and then underneath that are our tribal management structures. So we have a lands trust, a river trust, which I've already highlighted through our settlements. We've got our commercial arm, which is Tainui Group Holdings. Effectively, they've got to make money for us so we can spend it. And that's the crux of it. And then we've got our college for research and development, and our college is really our research arm, because there's no development without research, and there's no research without development. And that was one of Sir Robert's visions. He was quite a visionary man himself, and so the college was going to be the one place that did all the grunt work around what we need to be able to prioritise in terms of our initiatives that we make a difference for our people. Okay, this is our marae. So you would have seen the confiscation areas. So 68 of our marae spread from Auckland right through down to our whānau, support our whānau in Maniapoto, Te Tōkanga Nui Anoho, and then all along the west coast. So it's quite a big area. So I think when we think about 20 years on to now, back at the time we only had 20,000 tribal members when we first did our land settlement, and that's grown, like I said, to 70,000 members. In 1995, our asset base was $170 million, and it wasn't all cash too. It was primarily land, so it was just really land value, and that's grown over to be 1.2 bill over to current day. We've distributed probably more than $130 million now. We've also got, we're the biggest landlord in the Waikato, so we own most of the CBD, but we are the biggest ratepayer, I can tell you that much. So we do pay a lot of rates to Hamilton City Council. And our businesses across all of our asset holdings employ more than 4,000 people. So one of our big things is trying to employ more of our own people that are able to lead some of those roles. So in terms of the specific initiatives, and I'm thinking about the types of activities that the tribe's currently doing, we've got our signpost, which is really our roadmap, the types of priorities under each of the areas, and we're calling it Ngā Tohu. And basically, our work program's set across around 5 key areas. And one of the key areas is Ngā Tohu Kaupapa. So this is really around our culture and identity. And I'm not going to go through all of those initiatives, but probably just wanting to focus on a few in terms of the types of things that we're trying to make a difference for our whānau today. So we've got this toro, which is tikanga ora e reo ora. And we've got a program, and actually some of the teams in here, so that's sitting here, that's leading some of these projects. But we have a marae assets program which we're actually advancing at the moment. And if you think about the current, and I want to acknowledge Ngāti Awa and Tūhoi, who have just recently, through their marae, have hosted a range of people from the community as a result of the floods, as a result of the issues that happen over in Ichikan. So, our marae is probably one of the communities or one of the places that are critical to our people. And so as a tribe, and thinking about those types of things, it's even more critical now to invest in ensuring that our maraes, are safe, have the infrastructure, is able to accommodate our community. So the tribe's program in relation to the marae asset build is kind of well in advance. We're focusing on probably about 8 marae per year So when you think about our 68 marae and the types of rebuild projects that we've got to do, we've gone through a process where we've assessed each and every one of those marae and prioritised who needs what the most and first. So we're going through a whole marae asset program. We're investing probably over more than $2 million into some of those rebuild projects. In our reo, and like I said, our reo has been identified as probably one of the biggest areas that we need to grow. And so we've undertaken a range of programs in our reo space. We're even holding this weekend it's performing arts. It's a performing arts, and it's based on reo. And basically, if we can do things and celebrate reo in everyday life and everything that we do, then it just becomes the norm. So that's what we're hoping to build in terms of some of the initiatives within our people. Then we've got the hapori. So this is really our wellness area. And like I said to you, education's been probably one of the biggest areas for us that we've invested in heavily. Just in this year, 2017, is a milestone for us. Since 1995, we've given away 10,000 scholarships to tertiary education. So that's a massive. We've got quite a high number of people that are educated now. So education for us is if you get a good education, then that leads to getting good jobs and being able to create your own whānau well-being. So education is key for our success and is a must, hence why we've got quite a heavy investment. But not only that, we're doing other new innovative things around that, and I just wanted to mention, I think for me, the kawinata schools. So this is a new arrangement that we're having with our secondary schools, because a lot of our kids are actually not in kura kaupapa, they're in mainstream, and they're getting lost in mainstream. And so what we're trying to do within our rohe is actually have a relationship so that so that our kids that are in those schools get to learn about their own history, get to learn about their own identity, and so we provide effectively some of those resources for that school to be able to incorporate in their curriculum so they can deliver it. And I think it's been a really successful program. There's probably more schools now than 20, there's about 27. So it's growing in number in terms of the interest from secondary schools as well. So those have been really, really good initiatives for us. And home ownership, for obvious reasons, that's been one of the biggest challenges that I think faces all of us in terms of having enough places to house people and the ever-growing, the growth that is happening amongst our communities. So we've got a whole heap of initiatives in terms of financial literacy programs, right through to actually first home ownership and ownership programs through some of the initiatives we're doing. So we've just signed up with Housing New Zealand a development in Hamilton. So that's going to be exciting. And also in relation to that is our employment programs. And here you see there's some really good high numbers. And like I said, some of our members of our team who are leading some of these programs are actually here in the audience. And if you want to know more, I will connect you with them. Then we've got Ngā Tohu, and I won't go into this, but I alluded to some of the issues that we talked about before in terms of our people getting on the river. So this isn't just about, we want to be across all of our places. And so some of the initiatives that we're doing is really being able to exercise our relationships with our waterways, with our maunga, with our forestries. So those initiatives is really around enabling our people to be the ones out there issuing permits, the ones out there doing the clean-up projects. So those are the types of things that we're currently undertaking in Ngā Tohu. Whairawa is really around our economic independence. And so when we're thinking about economic independence, for me, it's about us being able to make our own decisions for ourselves. So some of the initiatives that we're looking at is really, and I know Naito's already doing it through their Whairawa scheme, but we also want to do something similar around iwi saver. So that our whānau can actually start thinking about the future in terms of, some of those their future wealth and independence, but also being able to make decisions around where they want to invest. If they want to buy their own home, then they have that pūtea there to be able to, well, they have that pool of funding there to be able to make those decisions for themselves, rather than the tribe trying to direct the types of activities or the types of initiatives for them. So whānau shifting that to the whānau actually making the decisions for themselves. And then the mahi tonu, and again, I'm not going to go into that, but this is really around continuing our claims, making sure that we're protecting our interests. And we've just, like this last financial year in particular, negotiated our aquaculture settlement of more than $2 million. And those are all initiatives that will go back into our community. And again, one of our big goals at Hopopu, it is our tribal headquarters at the moment, but we haven't actually got a building fit for our team at the moment. So one of our goals is actually to build our place, our administration, and a place to hold all of the knowledge and materials that we've gathered over years. So that's it for us in terms of, just really thinking about the types of projects. And if I go back to all of the types of initiatives that we're undertaking today, it was really based on some of that historical journey and the context from our settlements. And if we think about the journey from where we've been to where we are now, and what we've achieved, has been quite massive in my sense, in my own view. And I guess if I reflect back on some of the leadership of that time, and Rongo's already talked about, if we dream together, then if we dream together, then together we can make the dream come true. From Princess to Puya, and then in Te Ariki Nui was always one around relationships and partnerships. Draw strength from our partnerships and the people that we're working with. And Sir Robert, he pretty much put a stake in the ground and said, if we're going to be wanting to make change, then we've got to do it. Hence the settlement in 1995. Change is best made if people themselves take the initiative and have the courage and leadership to be able to do that. So thanks again for the opportunity to be able to share with you some of the whakaaro and some of my thoughts. And I guess for me, this is the future. This is why we do it, all our tamariki. So nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Was it all right?
Thank you, Donna, for that fascinating insight into the history of Waikato-Tainui and where we are today and where you're going. We have some questions from participants. The first one is from Kapoi. Kia ora, Donna. How are you measuring the well-being of your communities?
Good question. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us at the moment, is being able to test that. So we're looking at a number of initiatives around that, and I don't think we've got it right yet. And like I said, it's probably one of the biggest challenges for us, is actually, are we making a difference? And if so, what does that look like? So one of the big things for us is having data, and is able to gather that data in the right way. Some of it we haven't gathered at all, so we've been thinking about the types of things, to start collecting that information a little bit better. We've approached the government also to be able to access some of that data so that we can actually understand what our current state is. And then, in terms of understanding where our people are. So, it's not, I don't think we've actually got a formula yet. I'm quite new in the game, and I've been asking the questions, also of ourselves around how are we making a difference, and are these things making a difference, and where do we need to reprioritise, if any, in terms of that investment. but it's really hard to make all of those decisions without any information.
I don't think you're Robinson Crusoe there.
No.
I think a lot of people that are involved in philanthropy constantly ask the question, are we making a difference, and what does that look like? And that's an evolving field. Question from Tony Payne. What advice would you give organisations in the philanthropic and grant-making sector who would like to support iwi development?
Advice. Yeah, another good question. I think for me, one of the big things that I like to do is, where's that common ground? I mean, so a lot of the priorities that we've been focused on, we do turn mostly on our communities, on our whānau. So I think if we are to think about the types of initiatives, and like I said, we've, with the iwi in terms of approaching iwi, is one, first having that conversation, but thinking about where they could help us as well in terms of that mission, and find that common ground to be able to work together on some of those the types of initiatives that will make a difference to both our communities effectively. We've, if I just go back to some of the, if I think about the environmental initiatives, and like I said, the big part for us, there is some opportunities around the partnership, particularly if we're building capacity for our whānau to be able to do things for themselves. So it's those are some of those real easy opportunities where, being able to help train or create pathways in terms of employment. Those are probably one of the easy things that we can try and encourage.
This is a question, similar theme, it's from Mania King. Do you think that philanthropy could have a role in supporting the achievement of Whakatupuranga 2050? And if so, what might that look like?
Yep, Whakatupuranga 2050 is across the board. And as you would have seen, there are a range of initiatives from cultural through to wellness, and even in that area is big. So I think for me there is lots of opportunity. It's just sitting down and having that conversation to identify again where those common areas are.
So it's that partnership approach.
Partnership approach. Because sorry, and I'll just add, because the reality is the tribe can't be all and to everything, and we can't do everything. We actually need assistance, even our own people. So one of the things that I have been, in terms of our own thinking within our tribal organisation, is even testing ourselves whether we have to do everything. How can we enable our people to do it, to lead some of those initiatives themselves, rather than the tribe doing it all the time. So that's a challenge for us, even within ourselves, to think about, there's a range of programs that are out there that we're currently doing. It's almost like a provider type program. So for me, it's, the challenge amongst ourselves is, how do we actually enable our people to lead some of them? Because they're probably better at it too.
Do you think that that's an opportunity that you have that's different to, say, a community trust, which has a population that's a bit more nebulous, whereas you've got 70,300 members now that have got a direct connection?
Yeah.
And so you can use that, can't you, to get them involved and leading things?
Yep, that's right. And I think that's probably one of the things that we've got to think about more, is those types of opportunities, is to create the opportunities ourselves for our own whānau, rather than us having to feel like we have to do it all the time.
A question from Karen McLeod. A lot of trusts in this room are set up in perpetuity, and we all have the challenge of meeting demands of today versus an eye to looking long term and being future focused. Do you have any personal leadership reflections for us in that regard, about getting the balance between today and long term?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're trying to balance at the moment with our investment vehicle. So at the moment, particularly around the relativity, so that's that's pure cash potentially coming into our people, but we can't just spend it without thinking through what impact of that spend now is going to have on the future in terms of the growth. So one of the big challenges for us at the moment is thinking about, what does that investment, how do we better utilise all of our assets, pull it together so that we can actually grow that wealth to enable that longer term sustainability for the future. So that's something that we've been thinking about. This is like now, instant, immediate, because that's a real challenge for us. You know, because some of the initiatives that we've picked up and that we're building on, we're investing quite big chunks of money, but that would all have an impact on our future. So we've got to do it in a careful and measured way to ensure that sustainability over time. You know, our population is huge, so I don't think it's going to get less. We're growing our tribal register, you know, we're growing our tribal membership, you know, quite significantly. If you think about just in 20 years' time, 50,000 members, we're a young tribe, we've got young people, so they're going to be around for a long time, so we have to think about that future.
You mentioned tribal register. Can I just ask about that? I'm aware that, I know Ngāi Tahu has the blue book where they have all the names from 1848, I think. Does Tainui have something similar?
Not a blue book, but we just, if you can affiliate to your tupuna from that marae, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Someone that would like to, I suspect, Tamati Coffee from the Rotorua Energy Charitable Trust asks, does Waikato-Tainui share their knowledge with other iwi? If so, can we borrow you in Rotorua?
Yes, yes, we do share, and all you have to do is ask. So kia ora Tamati.
You're in there, Tamati. A question from me, actually. You talked about the Tainui dream. A part of that is that Tainui be a people who are fluent in Te Reo Māori. Could you just give us your thoughts on the current state of Te Reo and things that you think need to happen to perhaps lift that?
So like I said, you know, I'm probably one of the generation that missed out on the kohanga reo growing up. And so, you know, I always thought we were quite strong because we had a lot of our kids going through the kohanga reo movement and then all the kura kaupapa. And so, you know, I thought we had quite a strong number in terms of our fluency in te reo. But it turns out that a lot of our tertiary education grants, when we did all the stats, a lot of our whānau are still entering into tertiary education to learn te reo Māori. Hence why we've got our tikanga ora and reo ora strategy, and that's purely focused on the types of reo programs. It's pretty new, it only got launched last year in February, but there's been some dedicated priorities around reo. I think our current state is probably not as good as where we want it to be. And so we've been doing deliberate programs. So we've got initiatives that are focused on whānau and doing whānau plans so that they, as a whānau, can actually undertake initiatives. We've got programs focused on our teachers. So our teachers within our rohe, they all come together, they just came together in the school holidays and they learn about our own mita and our reo and work out initiatives of how to drive that within the schools. We have our own rangatahi who have been brought up through the kura kaupapa, who are advanced. So we have advanced reo programs for those kids who are there. We've got programs for our marae in terms of the pai. So then we've got a whole heap of initiatives that we're currently undertaking and investing in our reo ourselves, but also our whānau who want to be able to step up and do that for themselves, they're doing that as well. So yeah, probably not as good as we thought, but our reo initiatives that the team's currently running are going to increase that significantly by 2050.
A question from one of our Australian visitors, Genevieve Timmins. Thanks, Donna. How do you plan to sustain yourself and other leaders when the task you have taken on is so long term? What is your key resource for this?
It's growing the next succession planning effectively, and we're already starting to build that within our organisation.
Do you see any little Donna Flavells in your grad program coming through?
I have a daughter who's pretty much.
You're probably biased.
She's in her third year law school, but I've been trying to encourage her to go and work in a law firm.
No, don't be mean to
I don't think it's going to happen.
This is from Greg Wilkinson from Central Lakes Trust in Central Otago, which is Highlanders country, I should say, to preface this question. What investment, if any, does Tainui have in the Chiefs rugby team? I'm not sure if that's a serious question or not. It may well be.
We actually invested in the Warriors once upon a time.
Yes.
And let's not talk about that anymore.
I think that was a social investment.
Got a few rugby league players in there from Taniwhare.
So that's a no to investment in the Chiefs, is it? Yeah. Question from Shannon Tauriki. Looking at the vision before you and your community, what are some of the critical skills you use and need to lead?
I think the big, it's going to be hard because it's that innovation stuff. It's being more creative around how we're going to do things in terms of the reach, but also the types of programs that we can create that, like I said, where people are making the decisions for themselves. How are we going to do that? You know, that's been a tutu, that's been a thought provoker, that's been an innovator. So it's just really, you know, outside the box stuff and letting people have a chance and have a go around doing new and innovative things to get a bigger reach. So I think, you know, those skills, I'm not sure if there are any one set, but it's, you know, if you're just willing, have the leadership, have the courage to be able to have a go around doing things differently, then that's got to be a massive thing in itself.
Thanks, Donna. I've got a question, and we've talked about partnerships before. There's a question from Leonard Gardner. What are some successful social partnerships Tainui are involved in the Waikato? What social partnerships would Tainui like to engage in?
There's probably, it's a matter of picking which one, because there's quite a few different things that are happening on the ground in terms of some of our partners. I think probably the biggest one is really around, it's been interesting, is that whole highway that's come straight through the middle of the new expressway within Waikato. So there's been a lot of emphasis and partnership across a range of entities, including and also corporates, but it's really around being able to, our people having a right through. So if we think about the highways and the expressways that's been happening, a lot of our whānau have been involved in the place, the sites. They've been involved in providing advice and guidance around the types of, and addressing some of the impacts. They've been employed in terms of, managing some of those projects and the builds. Where the highway's gone through, there's been removal of homes, so there's been massive housing community projects that have been happening back at the marae. So we've taken some of those homes and rebuilt Whakakitenga at some of those marae. And, Taupiri's been one of those who have benefited from that. So, while there's this big, massive highway that's come through, there's been a whole heap of opportunities that's come out of that. And it's just been, like I said, being really creative. So having those homes, but being able to reuse them and relocate them to our marae to build the Whakakitenga, to build a housing. There's been people who have been able to lead those projects from those marae, providing that, the advice around the consenting, around the sites, around the protection of sites, around putting our our footprint, the carving. So, those are all the types of initiatives and social outcomes that have come from partnering with people. And then related to that is actually people becoming consultants within some of these companies. So, like in Becca, for example, those are the types of social outcomes that have been massive just from eroding from the project.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll bring to a close the questions because we're approaching that appointed time. Thank you very much, Donna. What I'd like to do is invite Jen Walsh from Philanthropy New Zealand and the Ngāi Tahu Fund to come forward and acknowledge your contribution to our conference.
Mō tātou, mō ka uri a muri a ka nei, for us and our children after us. Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you. Royal. Thank you. Thank you.